screams in the night, Indian legends, miles of footprints, sightings. What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Join us for eyewitness accounts, questions and answers, Bigfoot encounters of the past, and ongoing encounters in the present. Your host, two-time witness, field researcher for 43 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We have Steve in Kansas with us today. I did want to make mention real quick, we were having some issues with the show on YouTube. There's some people who are pirating the shows, and that is going to be dealt with here in the next few days by our attorney, so our business manager. So fair warning to those out there, if you're going to pirate the videos, you're going to be dealt with legally. So anyway, going past that, Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm can't complain.
It's a little bit cold there, I understand.
Yeah, it is. It's a balmy 16 degrees.
Oh, good Lord. Well, listen,
but
I'm gonna have you, talk about the things that we talked about originally, and then you've interviewed some people since then have had sightings. So I'm gonna hand you the mic, and fill us in for new listeners.
Okay, I was born and raised in Washington State. I spent 30 years of my life out there in the logging industry. In fact, where Will lived, and I drove by that area up there by Edenville and Roy. I lived in Yelma one time, but in May of 1980, I moved back to Kansas. But getting back to Washington, I've got a question for you, Will. Is back in 1970, I was hunting elk, Rimrock Lake, just east of the Go Rocks in Washington there. And that one night, we was down, I think it was the Teton River, and we was camped, and everybody was in the tent sleeping. And I stayed up, and I had the coffee pot going. I wanted to fill the thermoses. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I heard a wolf howl up on the ridge. It would have been up on pine grass. At the time, I thought it was a wolf, but I thought wolves were extinct in Washington. But whatever it was that howled put the hair up in the back of my neck. And I've been in doubt. Was it a wolf or was it a Bigfoot? And I don't know. I can't honestly say I've ever heard a wolf howl out in the wild. I've heard plenty of coyotes, but a wolf, I don't know.
Back at that time, around 1970, I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't think there were any wolves in that region. I think they've been relatively recently reintroduced, and mostly in northeastern Washington, and they've kind of filtered down, but it's a fairly recent advent. I don't think there were any back then.
I didn't either. I wasn't aware of it because, you see, the following year, I was up there with my brother-in-law and brother on Bear Mountain, and we got it dropped into that box canyon, and we was following the elk, and we cut fresh signs. And that's when we both had that feeling. We looked at each other, and I said, "Do you feel what I feel?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Let's get the hell out of here." And we booked it up out of there, and we got back to the campsite, and we met my brother-in-law, and he said he had been talking to hunters, and there had been bear hunters in there the weekend before, and they'd seen a Bigfoot. It showed up at their campsite, and they was in their bear hunting, and they had their hounds, and they booked. Well, we did too. I mean, afterwards, But at the time, we wasn't scared. We just had that feeling that, let's get the hell out of here. And that's exactly what we did. And I never really thought that much about Bigfoot. But then I moved back here in Kansas in May of 1980, and I was thinking about it today. Hell, I've been back here. This May will be 40 years. But Bigfoot wasn't an issue back here. And then I talked to one guy about 13 miles from here, and he was telling me that him and his friend, which is a doctor, had seen one. And it still didn't dawn on me, and I don't know. 12 years ago, I moved out in the country here, and behind the house, I'm thinking it was probably 6, 7 years ago, I ran across a pile of scant, and it was about 2 inches in diameter and about a foot long, and it had been eating pokeberries, and pokeberries are dangerous. I mean, they're poisonous to humans. But I looked at it, and at the time I didn't have my phone, and I didn't think about taking a picture. Bigfoot really didn't register. And, but I knew it wasn't a coon. It wasn't a coyote. I just didn't know. And I kind of sloughed it off. But then recently here, it would have been March 23rd, 2000, just this past year. I had pulled out of my driveway and I was going east, over to my daughter. She's 40 miles east of me, and I always take the gravel road cut across country. And there was a pickup truck, same make and model as mine, except it was maroon, and I'd wait for it, and I was kind of following it. And about 3/4 of a mile away from the house, there was a wheat field, and there was 3 geese, and they caught my attention. And I was surprised that they were still alive. Well, this truck throws on its brakes, and I look up, and I'm about 50 yards behind it. And that next moment, what came out in front of that truck, I mean, I looked at it, the first thought was coyote, I said, way too big, dog, way too big. And then there was a moment werewolf hit. And I got there and I said, no, it didn't have a snout on it, and there wasn't a tail. But my best description was an orangutan with a human's head that was kind of a charcoal gray. And I only seen it a brief moment. It was about 40, 50 feet. And the guys in the pickup, they started to go up this, they crossed the bridge because it was right at the power lines and the bridge there. And it was a gravel road, and they just put crushed rock on it. And the rock was loose, and they went to stop on that hill. And I says, man, you don't want to be stopping on that hill. But it was their emotions and their actions that got my attention, because they wanted to stop and back up, and I was gaining on them, and they seen that. Well, they went up on top of the hill, and there's kind of another dip. Well, they went to stop again, and I was coming up on them. Well, then they went on up the road maybe 100 yards and just stopped right in the road. And they pulled into this driveway quite a ways and just parked. And by that time, I was processing what I'd seen. I knew what I'd seen, but I didn't want to believe what I'd seen. And I didn't stop because I was pretty confident of what I had seen. And then I just, you go through a process of what it was and what it wasn't. And finally, I think it was after a week and a half, 2 weeks, I called you, and it was basically a juvenile Bigfoot. And
Hey, Steve, this is Tom. Can I jump in real quick? I'm following your story, and it's interesting. You had a truck in front of you, right? Some guys are in front of you. Did you
Yes.
say this thing ran in front of their truck?
I
Or
just
under
seen
it,
it come. No, I just seen it come out from in front of it, and I seen the head and the back, and I'm saying it was 22 to 24 inches off the ground. I never seen
So
any
was it on all
leg.
fours?
It was on all fours.
Okay, gotcha.
And I never
Right.
seen any leg movement. And I thought about that. Why didn't I see leg movement? And I think what it was is it sprang off the road, but it kept such a low profile, and the speed is what scared the hell out of me. I mean, you listen to these. Well, I like the Will's friend up there in northwest Montana, the judge, that says you basically want to leave them alone. You don't want to go out hunting them because, I mean, this spring I went behind the house to get mushrooms, and since then I've got me a dog, but I don't carry any heat with me. I mean, after you see how fast they can move and the low profile, if you're going to be their sack lunch, you're not going to have any time to respond to anything. I mean, they'll be on top of you so quick you don't know what hit you. And that's what's spooky.
Well, this thing you said it must have just lunged, and that's why you didn't see the leg movement. It was just like, yeah, okay. Wow.
Yeah, because I could see the front arms, and there was long hair that, you know what a Irish setter looks like with that long hair on the back of their legs?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what this was. It's like it had its arms or its legs folded down by its side. But I mean, it was just a flash. I mean, I went back up there 5 different times and looked around and walked around. I didn't cross the fence because it was posted, but
so he lunged across the road, and then did he disappear in the ditch or into the brush or what?
There was a plum thicket. But what amazed me is that about 30 feet there was a 4-stranded barbed wire fence. And the bottom wires, granted, were loose. I mean, I could go through them pretty easy, but I mean, you had the barbed wire fence, and then you had that plum thicket, and he disappeared into it. But I mean, it happened so quick. And I can't imagine what those guys seen in that pickup. I mean,
so it was in front of their truck then.
Yeah, it was in front of their truck.
Okay, all right. That's kind of where I was going. So they obviously saw this thing.
They had a bird's eye view. In fact, they had to slam on their brakes to keep from hitting it. It was that close.
You know, it would have been interesting if you'd been able to talk to them, huh?
Yeah, and I thought about it, but then I had 2 other women. I mentioned the story, and they said, "Well, you didn't stop and talk to them, did you?" And I said, "No." And one of them was a nurse, and she said, "Well, there's so many people around here that are on drugs." She says, "You may have gotten shot, but in this situation, you know." But I look back on it, and I was in a state of shock. I mean, I talked to a guy over Christmas, and he studies them, and he wants to see one and everything. And I got there, and he asked me, he says, "Well, have you seen any more?" "No." He says, "Well, I want to see one." And I simply said, "No, you don't." Well, I got a new phone. It really takes good photos. I want to get a picture of one. I said, good luck. But I says, I assure you, you don't want to see one. And you really don't. I mean, I've been out there and had encounters with bears. And I mean, they've been close. They've ran into me. And I've had cougars back here in Kansas and out in Washington. And yeah, you get startled, but it's what these creatures do to you. They put a fear in you that just, it doesn't go away. It doesn't. I mean, I'm to the point at night when it gets dark, I won't go outside. And
Steve, we hear that all the time. I mean, just time and again.
I go back behind the house here and get mushrooms in the spring, but I've got my dog with me, and I'll tell you what, I'm paying attention to the cows, I'm paying attention to the birds, and I pay attention to him because I know what's out there.
Yeah, Steve, you said it was a juvenile. Can you describe how big it was in terms of size?
Well, I'm estimating his back was about 5 foot, and I mean, it was straight. I mean, the front shoulders and the back was pretty level. And I think my front bumper of my truck is 22, 23 inches. And that's about how tall it was. And at the time, I estimated the weight at 200 pounds, but I didn't get a depth perception on him. I don't know how broad or thick he was. I just seen the side view of it.
Mm-hmm. Did you get a look at its face at all?
Just the side view, and it looked like a human face, and it was kind of, I mean, it didn't have a cone-shaped head or anything, that it was kind of rounded like a human, and it had a blunt nose to it. Mm-hmm. But, I mean,
Steve, this is, I apologize, I may ask a question that you already answered, but I was just curious, it zipped across the road. What color, do you remember what color the hair was on the creature?
Yeah, it was brown with a reddish tint because the red glittered in the sunlight. This was at 2:30 in the afternoon. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, anymore, I don't go out looking for them. I honestly don't. I don't go out looking for them. They appear. And they're going to appear when you least expect them to. I mean, that's the only advice I can give. If you go out looking for them, good luck. They'll find you, it seems like. But the thing that scares me is this is a juvenile. Where's mom and dad at? You know, I don't think they're too far away. But
yeah, probably
I think
not.
And I think that's the only reason I seen him. He was a juvenile, and he made a mistake. I mean, he was caught out in the middle of the road in daylight. And but the scary part about it is it's only 3/4 of a mile away from my house. And that's the uneasy feeling. I mean, and I know they passed through the area.
So is this an area like semi-rural, like farms, or what's some of the surrounding area like?
It's a rural area. We have section roads every mile back here, but you may have a section of ground. I mean, it's timbered, it's got ravines, it's got a creeks run through it, but I mean, it's wooded, and then you've got some pasture grounds and a few small fields, the corn, soybean, wheat, alfalfa, but But yeah, it's, I mean, I've got neighbors a quarter of a mile on each side of me, but I can't see either one of them. I can hear them if they're out shooting guns or something. I can hear them, but other than that, you know, we're kind of separated. But it's rural Kansas. I'm northeast section of it. I just, like I said, I feel kind of bad. I don't really classify myself as a researcher, but I don't hold my experiences back from people. I will share my experiences, and I tell them, I said, we're not alone. And I've had some people laugh at me, and my best response is I just simply, last thing I'll tell them is you don't ever want to see one. And I leave it at that, and they just kind of stand there with a blank look on their face, and, you know, and that's the end of it. I've only ran across one guy.
Steve, you're seeing the exact same thing that everybody says. They almost to the point where they're saying if they could go back in time and avoid having seen this thing, they would. They wish they hadn't seen it. They don't want to see another one. Why is that? Can you kind of maybe articulate or explain, you know, what's going on, you know, deep down inside? Why? What is it that causes you to feel that way?
Well, it's the fear of the unknown, but it's the fear that they are the apex predator. And I'm aware they're not going, I mean, you get one that's pissed off and he's on the defense, he's not going to back down from you. And there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to stop him. And I mean, it's the speed that they move at. I mean, it's just a fear that they are the apex predator. I mean, I don't, yeah, bears and cats, wolves, yeah, that, you know, they're going to run. You got a chance for them, but I just don't feel if one of them is going to get you, you're not going to know what hit you. And that's the fear I have, is the fear of the unknown. But they put a fear in you that you just basically powerless. I mean, I realize now that after seeing that one, I was in shock. And people get that, well, I'm going to take a picture of one. That's the last thing that's going to go through your mind when you see one. I mean, if you got an opportunity, but, you know, I don't know how you can prepare yourself for seeing one. I don't think you can.
No, I don't think so. It's always a surprise.
It's a surprise, and it's just it's the speed, the low profile. I mean, let me get on. What I've done is I'm retired and I can sell Native American flutes and stuff, and I've kept way back on my shows, but I do this flea market. And I'm up there for 5 days, and I have a 16-foot teepee that I set up. And on my door this year, I had my grandson, he's an artist, and he drew a picture of a Bigfoot. He sketched it out, and I painted it. And it's my door for my teepee. Well, I was at the show, and, I mean, he really did a good job of drawing it. I tried to put it the colors of the Bigfoot that I seen. The colors, I tried to match them a little bit. And you know, if you've seen one, you know what you're looking at. Well, this kid kept walking by the teepee, and PTSD struck him. I mean, he stopped and he started talking to the people that he was at. He says, "That's a Bigfoot. I seen one of them." Well, I walked out and I started talking to him. And this happened, I'm going to say, about a year ago. And there was 4 of them in a Subaru driving the country roads, and it was north of Lawrence. And they was driving down this road, and he said this creature stepped out of the road or ran out in front of the Subaru, and he said it was about 10 to 12 foot tall. And he said, we hit it. And he said, we stopped, and he said, we got out of the car, and it ran down over the bank into the timber. And he said, we followed a little ways. And he says, it wasn't a bear. Bears are not that tall, and they don't walk on 2 feet. But he said, I got hair. And he says, I'm going to get a DNA sample done with it on it. I don't know, but just talking to the guy, he was upset. He wasn't faking the story. He had seen something.
Well,
but
hey, Steve, let me ask you, how fast was he going when he hit it?
He didn't say, and I didn't ask. I mean, a lot of times when people are telling me the stories, I just let them vent, and I should ask more questions, but I was surprised to hear, I wasn't really set for an interview. I just wanted to hear what he had to say, but he was serious. They hit something, and it sounded like a Bigfoot. But the area he's describing now, I've heard of reports of a white one being up in that area. And then I just heard of another one as to where, it's on YouTube. It's an interview with a woman. And they was down in a public hunting area, and her son had got a pickup, and they heard a growl out in the cornfield, and they got ready to leave. Well, they had to pull out of the parking lot, and there was one on all fours. And they had her son, he drove by it, and he was peeling out, and he peppered it with gravel. And his mom looked back, and it was following him. And he was doing about 35, and it was still on him. And she finally said they got up to about 45 miles an hour before, but it was chasing him. But it got hacked off at him because they peppered it with gravel when he spun out. But now this is the same area that is the Delaware River. And this is where a lot of sightings are taking place here in this part of Kansas, and I'm just west of there. But now the second, this fall, I do the show twice a year, and I'm up there for 5 days. Well, this fall I was up there, and I was sitting out there by the teepee, and this Native American and his wife come walking by, and he started a conversation up. He says, I've seen 2 of them. And I said, oh, really? Well, I was talking to his wife, and she had a lot of knowledge about them, but I was trying to get what her experiences was, and the only thing she said was, she says, they move too fast, they hide too well, and you never want to shoot one. And then he was telling me that he was a Kickapoo Indian from the Kickapoo Indian Reservation, and the Delaware River runs right up through there. But he was running the road grader, and he was out there on the road, and he said he seen this thing walking on the hillside down the road, and he said he kicked a road grader up into high gear and went speeding down there to get a closer look at her as it walked across the hillside. And he said he got down there, and he said it walked into the timber, But he said there was 4 other people down there that worked for FEMA that seen it too. But he said, yeah, he said they're around. So
when he said that you don't ever want to shoot one, was he implying that if you shoot one, there are others that are going to come out in that area?
Well, I don't see. I was talking to her. I kind of missed out on his first encounter, but I thought he seen his first one was down in Oklahoma. But I don't know what she was applying. She had a lot of knowledge, and I was trying to pry it out of her. But a lot of them, they to get a Native American to speak about them, it's pretty tough. I mean, if they trust you, they'll tell their story. But if they don't, they're going to clam up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just the way they are. But I know for a fact I go back to hunt mushrooms. I don't carry a gun with me. It's just the fact of what I know is, you know, if I'm going to be there stack lunch, there's nothing I can do. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of that. And if you, after seeing that juvenile, you got to ask yourself, where's mom and daddy at? You know? Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think, if you see one, there's normally, the others are going to be close by.
Yeah. And since that one happened so close to your house, had you heard since then, or even before then, have you heard any like vocalizations, or have you found any prints in your area, like where you live?
No. Well, there was one. We got cows that run back there. That on a cow trail, it's going down the creek. I was looking, and you go down a hill, and the cows will cut sort of like a stair step into the bank. And on top of one of them, I was looking for prints, but the ground was all flattened out, and I thought that was kind of strange. And I looked, but I could never come up with another print. But if they're on all fours, what kind of a print are they going to leave? You know. Mm-hmm. But no, I've got another interesting story. I mentioned it in my last podcast. And there's a individual that lived about 5 miles east of me. And about a year ago, he spotted a Bigfoot down in his pond out there, and it was caught a fish. And I'd always go into the local post office, and I'd talk to the postmaster, and he'd come in once a week to get his mail, and he'd always inform her and tell her the stories. Well, then there's a guy that's got a Native American store right next to the post office, and we're good friends. And he'd talk to him, but there was 2 groups that showed up on his farm up there. And I drive by it. You can't see the house or the buildings are up on top of the hill off the road. But, I mean, I would drive up by there, and every time I go see my daughter who lives east of me, I'll always drive by his house. Well, he had called the sheriff's department several times and reported them. I mean, he was quite upset. Well, in last Christmas, his brother is up in the military, and he was stationed in California. Well, his brother came out and spent 2 weeks with him. And his brother had sent him a special camera to take pictures of him. And everybody in town kept asking me, getting photos. No, he said, I'm not going to take any photos. But he said they would come up and tap on his window and want him to come out of the house. And he wouldn't go out. But I don't know, this spring, he moved. His brother transferred from California to Fort Leavenworth, and he's in the military, and this guy is retired railroad. But this spring, he moved over Leavenworth. But I was told in town they put that farm up for sheriff's auction, and nobody would bid on it. And I find that strange. But I drove by there last Tuesday, and they've got a realtor sign up on the property, and the gates are padlocked. I mean, you can't get up, and I wouldn't go up there anyway. But I mean, I will drive by the place, but I thought that was kind of strange. And I don't know whoever buys the farm, but I kind of, they got guests that come with the farm.
When he told you said he told law enforcement, what was their reaction? Did they do anything?
I don't know what they did. I haven't been able to talk to the sheriff on it because I know the sheriff and I wanted to question him on it. But he's, well, when he first seen him, he called Fish and Game, he called K-State, he called KU. I mean, I think he called the Kansas State Patrol. I mean, he called everybody because he was paranoid. He didn't know what the hell he had out there. And, I mean, he was, but it was enough for him to move off the farm.
When you said that he called, are you saying that he called like the universities, Kansas and Kansas State?
Yeah, he called both universities.
Who did he call there? Like what? Like just like a scientist there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And when he called Fish and Game, our head office is in Pratt, Kansas, and he called the main headquarters of the state to report it. They're aware of it. You know, they're aware of them.
Did he say what their reaction was, or did they just ignore him when he contacted the universities?
I don't know. I didn't see. Everything I heard was secondhand. I didn't have the opportunity. I always wanted to interview him on it and ask him about it, but I never had the opportunity to meet him.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't feel I knew him well enough to go driving up his driveway to talk to him about him.
Huh.
You know.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what their reaction was, or if like what their response was. But yeah,
and if I ever get the opportunity, I mean, whenever I see a deputy in the county or somebody, a game warden, I'm not bashful. I'll always pop the question. You know, hey, have you any Bigfoot sightings? And that one deputy, that one night, you know, I mentioned Dogman to him. He said, well, I've heard of Bigfoot, but he said that Dogman's a new one to me. And I said, yeah, me too. But, you know, I'm not afraid to pop the question to him. I just, you know, they're either going to lie to me or, you know, and if they lie, I can tell it. But normally, you know, they're pretty honest. But I would like to, I do now, if I know that they're a dispatcher for the sheriff's department, I have asked the dispatchers how many calls they get in on them. But some of them say none, and, you know, but I don't know all the dispatchers. So, but yeah, I'm not afraid to ask the question. I just feel it's, in my community, it's, you know, I need to let the people be aware that we're not alone out here, you know.
Yeah.
I've heard of several reports on YouTube And their newspaper articles that date back to the 1890s, and there's articles written about them in Kansas. So, they go back. They've been here. And it's just, I did have an opportunity to talk to a gal. She lives in Kansas now, but she was born and raised in Oklahoma. And when she got married, her and her husband went camping on the eastern border of Oklahoma and Arkansas. And they had a bull mastiff dog in the campsite that night. And it started barking and stuff and ran into the brush and timber. And she said the next thing she knew is that dog came flying out of the woods. It was thrown out of the woods and lit their campsite, and it ran and hid in the tent. And I believe they packed up and left that night, but they was aware of what was out there. But
hey, Steve.
Yeah,
I had a quick question. I'm gonna back up just a little bit. You had mentioned that there's historical accounts of these things in your area or in Kansas. Is that right?
yes.
Okay. So this is an area that's always been, I find particularly fascinating, the historical accounts of these things, because that it just basically, ties them into our modern times. Do you know what they were referred to? What did they call them back then?
Well,
in
they
your
was I believe up in Washington County, and this is what's interesting to me, Sean, up there in Nebraska. Now, Washington County is in Kansas, but it's kind of southwest of where Sean had his sightings in Nebraska. But in Washington County, they called them the wild people of the woods. But they was, and then in eastern Kansas, there was an account, I think back in 1890, and they called it the wild man. But
okay, and the reason I ask is that I'm always curious. It's interesting, and also for folks out there that want to do a little bit of research themselves, historical research. It's good to know how to do that and what you're going to be looking for, because obviously they didn't call them Bigfoot back then.
Yeah.
No, they didn't call it.
I was just going to mention doing research, years ago. It is really key what you search for, because you can put in Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all that stuff, and it won't come up. And a lot of times you have to go to local libraries. That's where that stuff is usually kept.
Yeah, I mean, up in Washington County, they named the town, but I looked it up, and I think the town is extinct now. I mean, but it is Washington County, and they said the townspeople gave these wild people clothes to wear in the wintertime. They donated a bunch of clothes to them. So, but that's what was in the newspaper article. So, but now the one in the eastern, on the eastern part of Kansas, close to the Missouri border, I believe it was a preacher's wife that had seen it. And the townspeople got together and got a posse. And back in those days, back in the 1800s, I mean, I hear stories of Kansas where the jackrabbits were so bad. Well, they would just get all the local people and they would take a section of ground with clubs and walk shoulder to shoulder. And they pretty much made the jackrabbit extinct in Kansas. But yeah, they would form posses to go after, what was ever bothering them. So, but yeah, it's, I don't know. I had one incident this summer that's kind of puzzling. I've I've got that yellow lab, and he's my protector, and he's going to give me a heads up. There's several nights here, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he'll just come unglued. And I just wait for something to hit the house, and then I'll get excited. But, I mean, he can get my attention. But it was one evening in the backyard. I probably got about 50 feet, and there's a barbed wire fence, and it's kind of grassy and brushy, and then it drops over a bank down into a creek. Well, there was a rotten smell coming up out of that creek, and he started raising hell. And normally, if there's something outside the fence, he'll chase it. Well, he got down to the fence, and he was barking, and the hair was up on the back of his neck, and he was pacing back and forth, and he wasn't going underneath that fence. And I finally yelled at him. I said, let's go in. And boy, he didn't hesitate to turn tail and come up to the house. But I don't know what was down there. But when does a dog bark at a smell, you know? But I don't know. Like I said, I used to go fishing over at this one lake, and there's been sightings over there. And I talked to a coworker, and he just got back from the Middle East. He was in the National Guard. He went out there one night, and he said, I was out there fishing. He said, I was drunk. But he said, there was something behind me up there in the brush. And he said, I got scared, and he said, I left. He says, I think it was a cougar. And I said, I don't think it was a cougar. You wouldn't have heard it. But I don't know what it was. But you hear that, and I used to go over there in the summertime and fish, and I was only over there maybe 2 or 3 hours in the evening. But after I seen that one, I just got there, and I know they're in the area, and I don't know. I mean, since I've seen that one, my outdoor activities have really slowed down a lot. Because I know I'm not alone anymore out there. And they pass through here. I don't think they stay in here. I talked to the guy southeast of me that had the sightings about 20 miles from here. I seen him 2 weeks ago, and he said, I haven't. He said, it's been pretty dead. He said, I haven't seen any activities. So I don't know. I mean, they're around. They seem to like that Delaware watershed. And you get looking at why Kansas. Well, 97% of Kansas is privately owned. We have 300,000 acres open to public hunting, and there's another 1 million acres that you can get permission to walk in. But, it's not you're limited to where you can go. And I think that's a benefit for these Bigfoot, because they can be on parcels of ground that nobody goes to. It's all privately owned. So, you don't have access into it. So,
hey, Steve, I'm going to jump in.
Yes.
I want to jump in for just a second and kind of comment and actually and maybe ask Will. You say why Kansas. So on the lower 48, Will, do you know of any states that do not have or could not possibly have Bigfoot, either encounters or Bigfoot in there? Because I'm thinking in terms of, even in areas like the Dakotas, North and South Dakota, they have reported encounters there. They're rare, but they do happen. Any thoughts on that?
I've actually had witnesses contact me from virtually everywhere. places you would never think they'd be. Sure enough, they're there. Maybe not large numbers or large numbers of sightings reported, but yeah, there seem to be all over the place.
Yeah. And, this goes back to the historical thing. I'm thinking, okay, so here we are in the 21st century, and, going back to the 20th century, we have reports in virtually every one of the lower 48 states. If we're having them now, I can only imagine what it must have been like 200 years ago, a millennia ago. They were probably all up and down the North American continent. Just a comment, perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and to be honest about it, I think they're growing in population, and more people are aware of them. And I know in my area of Kansas, there's a lot more homes because they're wanting to move out of the bigger cities and, have their house on 5 acres or 10 acres or whatever. And they have the opportunity here in Kansas. And, you got more people out in these rural areas. And, there's more ice out there. But I talked to one gal Tuesday, and she said, I wanted to see one. I said, no, you don't. She said, well, just driving down the road, I want to see one at a distance. And I keep telling her, I said, no, you don't. But, and that's probably one of the best ways of seeing them back here is if you're going to be on the road, you might, get a glimpse of one. Right after I got my dog, I was heading over to my daughter's house, and I think I was only about 3 or 4 miles down the road heading east. And he always rides in the back seat, but that one afternoon, he really got my attention. He was in the back seat, and he started growling. And the first thing that popped in my mind, I said, must be a Bigfoot in the area. I don't know what it was. I didn't see nothing. I didn't smell anything. But I was doing probably 30 miles an hour. But he picked up something that he didn't like. And that's the only time he's ever done it. And we're pretty much inseparable anymore. Wherever I go, he goes. And if he ain't, I used to do inside shows, and I don't do them anymore because I can't take him in with me. But he's my buddy. He's my protector. And it's the best thing I ever got was that dog. But they're a good detector. But, no, I don't know. I sit back and I kind of feel bad because I ain't out beating the brush and stuff. But really, you don't have to if you're open about it and willing to talk to people. And yeah, sometimes you get some negative feedback, but you can blow that off. But people need to be aware of their surroundings and that we're not alone out there.
We're not alone. I just want to. I'm going to jump in real quick and kind of support what you just said. Not only are we not alone, but the more you look into this topic, from whatever perspective, it becomes pretty apparent that the only myth regarding Bigfoot is that it is a myth. It really is not. And there's just simply too much credible eyewitnesses out there, like yourself, that have encountered these things, and all up and down, all throughout the lower 48, and I'm sure Canada has a pretty substantial number as well.
Yeah, fellas, we're running a little short on time. Steve, we really appreciate you coming on and recapping. We talked to you before some time ago, but always interesting details coming out, and then the new information you shared with us. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep you informed on, I'll be out there talking to people, and who knows, maybe one of these days I'll be driving down the road and boom. I mean, November on Thanksgiving, I was coming back from my daughter's about 12 o'clock at night, and about 3 miles east of me, this deer was in the ditch, and the next thing I knew, smash.
Oh, boy.
It hit the passenger's door. It put a pretty good dent in it. Yeah, I mean, you never know. And where I'm at here in Kansas, it's there appears to be a lot of sightings.
Yeah, I did have one quick question before we wrap up. The guy that hit the creature and had the hair, did he say it did any damage to the vehicle?
He didn't say. I didn't get in there. Hopefully, he'll be back this spring. He'll come back by again, and I can get some more questions. I'd like to follow up. I should have got his name and phone number.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to find out.
Yeah, but when he told me the area, it didn't surprise me because there's been, you got the Delaware River and you got Lake Perry, and you got the whole watershed up through there, and it's a perfect location for them.
Right. Brian and Tom, do you guys have anything?
No, just thank you, Steve, for coming on.
No problem.
Yeah, again, I just want to say thanks.
I never like to hear myself speak. I never like to hear myself speak because if I make a mistake, there ain't, there's no calling it back or correcting that. But,
Yeah, I don't think most people like to hear themselves talk. I think that's just kind of a natural aversion. But you did great, and we really appreciate it, Steve. Thanks for joining us, and everyone, stand by for the next segment. Welcome back from the break, everyone. We have our good friend the Judge joining us again today. Fellas, I'm sure we have lots of questions or topics we can discuss, so we'll let you guys take the lead on this since you were asking questions.
I'll take the first question. I got one here from a guy named John. He's actually here in Oregon. And I like this question. He wants to know if Bigfoot has a sense of humor, do you think they will mess with people for purposes other than running them out of their area? Do you think maybe they, for their own entertainment, do something with us?
I think it's entirely possible. We see gorillas and chimps in particular. They're the ones I talk about a lot, and even orangutans. Higher primates seem to have humor as part of their emotions. They do things to each other, and I think sometimes people in those settings. But so, yeah, I think it's possible. Sure, why not?
Yeah, Will, I was just about to say, haven't there been cases like monkeys or chimps in zoos actually throwing stuff at some of the people that come to see them?
Oh yeah, that's usually a different display. I don't think that's so much humor. We're throwing their feces at people, but yeah, that's a different thing. But there was one video I saw, and I can't remember what the gorilla was doing, but it was actually drawing people's attention away from it, and it was doing something else, and it was kind of laughing about it. Like it was pulling the wool over their eyes, but yeah, and the feces throwing thing, that's not something I want to be on the receiving end of with these things.
It makes me think of that cartoon that there's one that Gary Larson from The Far Side did one. I think I sent it to you. I'm sure you've seen it before, where they comment that we're going to test the humor of these things with the hand buzzer handshake. And then the next thing you see is, bits and pieces of the guy all over the place.
You're right.
Hey, Will, just to, I guess, answer one of the questions that came up last time, or maybe it was a couple times ago, about the umbilical cord.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about gorillas, but according to Jane Goodall, what chimps do with the umbilical cord is they basically just leave it, and it eventually dries out and just falls off.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much standard behavior in nature.
Yeah, it says that the mother leaves the cord in place and nurses her young with the cord attached, and then it eventually dries out and separates naturally, usually within a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I'm gonna jump in on that because we got Vicky from Ohio who also wanted to comment on it. And first thing is, Vicky says she loves the show. So, Vicky, thank you so much. She says she saw a documentary where the silverbacks actually. I guess the silverbacks and the chimps, I think she said, at a national zoo, indeed had a placenta and the umbilical cord, and just kind of ditto what you just said, Brian. So kudos to Vicky for sending us that comment.
Yeah. Hey, Will, here's another thing. This is more of a comment than a question, but in doing research on gorillas, I was surprised to learn, and maybe you already knew, that, how we talk about how there are different types, the 4 types of Bigfoot, and maybe even 5. Mm-hmm. Well, there are also 4 types or subspecies of gorillas, actually, and they all have different characteristics. There are the mountain gorillas, and I think there are like the east lowland gorillas, the west lowland gorillas, and then like the river gorillas. And they all have different characteristics. Like, for example, the mountain gorillas have thicker and longer hair, I guess, obviously to deal with the colder climate. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that there are 4 types of gorillas as well as 4 types of Bigfoot.
Yeah, I think with any species, when you start getting some physical separation and the gene pools are, they will favor, whatever conditions over time that they're in. Some of the physical traits will be enhanced and others may go away, so you get some differences. I don't think it's unreasonable with these things either. Do we have any other questions from listeners, or?
Yeah, we do. I've got a real good one here. This gentleman wants he's just commenting on the dash cams, and I kind of want to take it a step further because it's a really excellent idea. Do you think that a dash cam would be possible, or do you know of anybody that has actually caught what would be a credible recording, a video of one of these things? And I also just want to mention, if people are putting dash cams on their vehicles for this purpose or just any kind of wildlife, put one on the front and looking back, because as hunters know, many times animals will wait for you to pass and then they'll go behind you. But anyway, back to the question, do you know if anybody that may have recorded one of these?
I think there are a few that have made the claim. I don't know how good the claims are or how good the videos may be. It's certainly a possibility, sure. I mean, I have one. I haven't put it up in my car yet, but I got one, and mostly it's for the crazy drivers here in California, but yeah, right. I suppose, sure, it's possible. Why not? We get the majority of sightings that are on or near roads, so.
Yeah, I believe there's one out there that a police officer captured. Shot across the road, and he pulled over the side of the road, and it shows him going off with a light, flashlight, trying to find it. It's blurry. But
I saw that one. I just want to say what really caught my attention about that one was the you catch their tone of voice, because you that's how you sort of judge whether it's being truthful or not, and it seems very authentic. Him and his passenger were very, very shocked and surprised. Is that the one you're talking about, Tony?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. And right? They were going, "Did you see that?" And he pulled over the side of the road and went over there with a flashlight. And of course, what we know about these creatures, it was either long gone or it was very well concealed.
There's another one out of Russia that the camera's pointed backwards, but I personally found it to be questionable. The Sasquatch was allegedly chasing the car, but everybody take a look and make their own decision. But it looks a little slow and a little bulky to me. But that one's out there as well.
Hey, so Bill, I have a question. Because you've talked before about how when they eat something, they'll eat everything, bones included. And I guess my question is, the same thing I think is true. Like, okay, so for example, if you give a dog like a bone from a large animal, it's not going to be able to eat it, right? But if you give a dog chicken bones, it will eat it and it'll eat the bones. And my question is, bones are not really digestible. And a lot of times when you see dogs eat or consume bones, they will vomit. And so we often talk about scat, but I'm just wondering if you've ever come across what you perceive to be Bigfoot vomit.
I've never seen anything like that, but how would you know? And here's something about bones too. I mean, we used to have a bull mastiff, and smaller dogs. My collie years ago would never be able to chew up his bones completely, eat the meat and gristle and things like that off him, and leave bones all over the yard for the lawnmower to find. But the bull mastiff, we have ribs or whatever other, steak, other kinds of meat with bones, and she would chew them up and swallow them in less than a minute. So it really depends on the size of the jaws doing the work.
Wow. But she never vomited back up? Or?
No.
Oh.
All right, so I've got one here, and this is Bernard from Ohio, and he's got a really good question. And Will, I think we've actually talked about this in the past, and it has to do with the strength of these creatures. And so he's talking about the strength of silverbacks. They can actually pick up, move cars, and it's a kind of an interesting question. But he wanted to know what would happen if there was a confrontation between a Bigfoot and a silverback. What do you think the outcome would be?
You're talking about a gorilla?
Yeah, silverback gorilla.
Well, the Sasquatch is a lot bigger than a gorilla, so I think it's fairly obvious what the confrontation would be. It would be over very quickly, and probably there wouldn't be a confrontation. Just because the size and the power of these things is much more than a gorilla's.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, he has another question, and I'll just ask it. He wants to know if Bigfoot uses what's called fast twitch muscle fibers for them to move the way they do. I'm not sure. I've never heard that term before, but any thoughts on that?
I have no idea. I'm not really familiar with that term either.
Well, fast twitch refers to basically, well, not to get the whole thing with weightlifting, but fast twitch muscles or fibers are important for what they call powerlifting. That means trying to lift as much as possible in one time, whereas slow twitch fibers are more, I guess, for bodybuilding. I guess Bigfoot probably has both, though.
Well, now would that be something that's naturally in muscle tissue, or is that developed through weightlifting?
Well, it's usually natural. It can be improved through powerlifting, but it's mostly through natural, like, genetics. But this is a good segue to something that I was going to ask too, because I looked up chimps, and you know how they say that chimps, in terms of weight comparable to humans, they're 4 times as strong or 4 times stronger than humans.
Yeah, they have the strength of four 6 foot tall men.
Yeah. Well, there's a source I found. There's a scientific explanation for that, and that is that the muscle fibers closest to the bones, those are important for strength, are actually much longer and more dense. So a chimp is able to generate more power using the same range of motion than humans. And this is from the Lester Fisher Center, whatever that is.
And that makes sense. I mean, Sasquatch has higher bone and muscle density than humans, so their strength is going to be much more. So aside from their size, they're going to have, that exaggerated strength like chimps and gorillas do.
Yeah. Because didn't you say, there have been accounts, right, where they've been known to just take a whole deer and just put it over its back as if it's nothing and carry it away?
Oh, yeah. Right.
And how much does a deer weigh, usually?
Depends on the deer.
What kind of deer?
But yeah, that goes to
let's assume the big, like a mule deer or whitetail. I mean, muleys get pretty good size, right?
150, 200 pounds, piece of cake.
And then, we also have stories where, somebody saw an elk get hit on the road, and this person went down the road a little ways. They turned around and came back. And so they were back at the site of the elk kill, and this was at night, I believe. And they were back at the site of the elk kill probably within about 7 minutes, and the elk was gone. And this person was wondering, just how does that happen? There's no drag marks or anything. Something that just picked it up and carried it off in the woods. Will, do you have any thoughts on that? Like what kind of strength? Phenomenal strength it would take to do that.
Phenomenal strength, sure. I mean, and again, you're talking something that's extremely large. They have higher bone and muscle density, so yeah, I mean, the strength is going to be something that's difficult for us to even consider, let alone, and we have no way of measuring it at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Wouldn't surprise me though if 2 or 3 joined in the effort to carry it off.
I was just thinking that. I was wondering the same thing because this person said it had the rack had a full rack of antlers, and so it would make sense if 2 of them carried it off.
It could be, sure.
1,200 pounds approximately on a bull. So you're talking 2 of them or 3 of them could lift it, take it out without, I don't think, much of a problem at all.
Yeah, and Will, because think about this: if chimps are 4 times stronger than humans, given the same weight, and let's just assume, and this might be just being conservative, but let's just assume that Bigfoot is the same weight, and let's just say that they're 4 times stronger than humans with the same weight, and you think that they probably weigh 5 or 6 times what a human weighs, what an average human weighs. So it's no surprise that we have reports of them being able to push over, huge trees and have, huge tree breaks and stuff like that.
Well, and chimps don't weigh what humans do. They're considerably less in weight. So, and then you'd have to factor in the bone and muscle density differences, besides their size. So, yeah, I mean, without a lot of those facts, it's very difficult. But being able to do some of those things, sure. I mean, why not an animal that large? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting if somebody in our audience, maybe this is a shout out, if we have maybe a professor of mechanical or civil engineering who could answer, because this is a question that we've had. How much strength would it take? What's the breaking strength? Say, for example, of a pine or Douglas fir tree, say 3.5 inches in diameter, to just snap it over, and how much force would that take? That's an interesting question.
That's a question I've been interested in for years, and would love to talk to somebody, like you say, somebody that's an expert in mechanical engineering, to give us some kind of an idea of what sort of strength it would take to do that, either the snapping or twisting.
And to think if they combined, if there were more than one, I mean, how much power would they have together? You know, if they were both pushing over a tree.
You mean like if two Sasquatch teamed up to push a tree over?
Right. I wonder how.
Oh,
big,
okay.
I wonder how.
Yeah,
big
right.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about it, you know, even that's a live tree. Okay, so you're trying to snap those fibers, that cellular network of fibers in a live tree.
Plus
It's very,
it depends
very-
on the kind of tree it is and how the root system is.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking now if it
But
was
you really,
a big cottonwood tree, those go over pretty easily.
Unfortunately, they do. We've got one in the backyard. We're waiting. But, you know, and then, so if a live tree, let's just say, for example, you've got a 3.5 inch Douglas fir, noble pine, you know, what have you. Okay, so each one of those is going to have a different breaking strength. But go to your local hardware store and grab for example, a 2x4. You're not going to be able to grab a 2x4. No man, I don't think, is going to be able to grab a 2x4 with their bare hands and snap it, or even a 1x1
without some kind of leverage in play.
Exactly right. So
the strength that you're talking about is grip strength. It's not
Right.
the strength of the whole animal necessarily. It's the grip. If they can grip and twist a green tree, you know, if any of you have cut wood, you'll know that the dry stuff is light. It can be thrown around. It pops pretty quick from the bit of your axe. But green wood is much harder, much denser, much more fibrous. It's beyond my imagination. Imagine one of those things grabbing a tree and twisting it off. The grip must be phenomenal.
See, in my first book, I put two examples. One was a Douglas fir that we found in the Washougal River watershed that was green. It was the middle of July. It was freshly done. That one was snapped over 90 degrees. No disease, anything like that in it. 3 inches thick. Another one almost exactly the same. It was a ponderosa pine in Northern California here. Same thing, 7-8 feet off the ground, but it was twisted. Now, I examined them, both trees, very closely around the damage, and there was nothing damaged, even small twigs adjacent to where the damage was. No damage. So whatever grasped that and did that, you know, it was just the strength of its arm doing it. There was no leverage. There was nothing, no other mechanical devices used that you could see that would have left damage on the bark.
now that's interesting. That it just simply had the
It
brute
grabbed
strength,
it and
the
just
grip.
did it. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Will,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go
ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, I was just about to say, when they do break trees and so forth, because we hear about them, you know, peeking in windows, people's houses. Have they ever, I mean, I'm thinking specifically about the 1924, the mining incident, but aside from that, do they use branches and break trees and use it to damage houses? Like just maybe swinging at windows and things like that.
No. Well, there was a, you know, when we had our police friend TW on, and we talked about one of the first times he was called out on a disturbance call, and there was an older couple had one of these things around their house, and the creature actually smashed in the kitchen window. Just did it with its hand or fist. We don't know exactly how it did it, but it did it without the use of any kind of tools. And then the gentleman of the house went out the front door, and the creature was there, or another creature. We don't know if it was one or more, but there was one there, and it took a swipe at him and missed him, fortunately. But yeah, we don't hear about him using anything like that. I do know one account where was a chunk of wood was thrown through a window, but that was a different type of situation.
Now, in that case, did they do anything to provoke it?
No.
to annoy it? It just did it on its own?
It just did it on its own. It was apparently, prowling around the house, and for whatever reason, it did that. But they were apparently in the living room, oblivious to anything that was going on, and it was at nighttime.
Oh.
Is that the one where I think? Is that the one where TW said he went around the backyard? He had to go. Then he had to go around the other way because he was stopped by a cement fence or something.
I don't know. No, that was
he ran into it.
That was later. That was another incident.
Oh,
he was
okay.
called out on a disturbance call, and that's the report he took from the people. And then later, I think that same evening, that's where he found the dozen or so pit bulls that were literally torn to pieces. And it was,
oh, wow.
And it was relatively close to where these folks lived. So,
but didn't he also go out on a call where he went in the backyard? It threw a chunk of wood at him.
Yeah, that was a different incident.
Okay, so my question is, I don't think we can answer it because it's not our profession. But I wonder, how does he go back and fill out an incident report? I saw this Bigfoot.
We're gonna have to bring him on the show again and ask him that, because I don't recall what he told me about that at the moment. But let's plan on bringing him back on, and we can go over those details.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, going back to the other incident that you were talking about, is that fairly common where a Bigfoot or a group of Bigfoot would just attack like a house like that unprovoked, or is that kind of a rarity?
That's more or less a rarity, because if they're snooping around houses, usually they don't do things like that. That's kind of an unusual situation.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about the 1924, the mining incident with the miners. They, from what I recall, they had pissed off the creatures because I think that they either shot one of them or shot at one of them, and they came back for revenge, I think, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they took a shot at one. They said that they saw the bark fly off the tree near where its face was. It apparently didn't hit it, but they took a shot at one, and then that night the cabin was attacked.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, Brian, because they provoke these things by shooting at it. So kind of a little pro tip for everybody out there: don't shoot at them.
Yeah, don't take a pot shot at one. They take offense to that. Like I'm sure,
and they bring buddies
would.
with them,
and they bring friends back. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's scary.
What is the biggest, let's say, troop or group you've ever heard of?
Well, I was told by a good source that there was a group. Now, remember, groups are typically 4 to 6 individuals in a family group. But the groups will sometimes bond together temporarily. And there was an incident where there were 7 groups that bonded together in an area. I think there were 35 individuals.
Wow. That'd keep you awake at night.
Yeah, it's not something you'd want to... And then we have the story from Union, Oregon. Tom, you and I have talked about that a number of times, where the 2 guys were trailering the Jeep from Idaho and stopped for a pee break and had what they guessed by what they saw in the moonlight, 20 or more of these things were moving in on them and actually got very close. They got lucky and got out of there in time.
What was interesting about that was also the way they moved. It was a kind of a herringbone. He says like a weave pattern. They were going back and forth.
They kept kind of zigzagging back and forth through the trees toward them.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was, I think that was the one where one of them got so close. I mean, they just jumped in the truck and stomped the gas, ran over its foot, and screamed in pain and rage, which was a good reason to keep going.
I think I'd be screaming after I crapped myself if one got close enough for me to run over its foot.
Will, you took one of my you answered one of my questions. I was just about to ask.
If I would have crapped myself.
No. But we've heard. I think a few weeks ago we played the audio of perhaps maybe two groups kind of vocalizing to one another, and I was just about to ask. Are there cases where there are not just two, but perhaps three or four groups that are in the same area? And what do they do? Do they fight? Do they kind of bond together for temporarily?
Well, if you see that many in a group, they've obviously bonded together because, if they're, and for whatever reason, we don't know yet, but, that's usually what's going on there, because usually if you see a group, it's just one group, but if there's that number, there's more than one group.
But you're saying that it's probably just a temporary thing. Eventually, they'll go their own ways.
Yeah, because they're territorial. I mean, they will bond together temporarily for whatever reason they do it, but it's not very long, and they go back to their own areas.
Okay.
That would be a formidable group. That'd be a situation. How could you deal with that? 35 of these things?
I don't think I'd want to deal with that. One group is enough.
Yeah. Exactly.
One individual's enough.
One is one too many.
Hey, Will, to kind of switch topics, because it's been a while since we talked about this, and I don't remember all the details, but I think you said that you have at least one person in the JRG that's in Australia. Can you talk a little bit about the Bigfoot there? I mean, do they have different types?
Well, we do have representatives there. They're very similar, actually. It's just like with the Yeti, there are two major types. Now, beyond that, I don't know about the variations, but so it's a common theme everywhere that there are kind of two main variations. But again, it's like here and with gorillas and things like that, it's if there's a division with topography that separates breeding populations, then different traits are going to pop up in these different groupings. So it's not much different than here, really.
So the behavioral characteristics are about the same as here?
Very similar.
And what about the public perception there? Is it kind of like in the U.S. where there are a lot of skeptics out there. There are a lot of people that just don't believe it at all, but there are a large percentage of people that either believe in it or are willing to admit that it's a strong possibility. Like, what's the public perception in Australia?
I don't think it's much different than here. It's everybody everywhere sort of like, well, if you prove it, then I'll believe it. But with all the state of the subject, with a lot of iffy pictures or pictures where people are claiming things and there really isn't anything in those pictures, and we see a lot of those, they call them blob squatch pictures. It sort of keeps things where it's always been.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up a good question, though, or a good point, and that is the argument that you hear from so many people is, well, gosh, I'm in the woods all the time. I've never seen one. I don't know anybody who's seen one, therefore they don't exist. And I think the counterpoint on that is, listen, you're not looking for deer, elk, bear, or even silverbacks. You're looking at something, and I'm just looking for your feedback or comment on this. This is a creature that, for the most part, wants to remain hidden, wants to remain unseen. And you could be in the woods, and frankly, in some of the thickly wooded areas, you could probably be 30 feet away from this thing, and you'd never know it. It wouldn't make a sound.
Right. And I actually think Tony's point of view would be better, because from a legal standpoint, when we're talking about evidence, there's a lot of evidence. And it all gets tried in the court of public opinion. And who the hell cares about public opinion? If you got proof, you got proof.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
Tony, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
So you hit it right on the head. There's not much more to elaborate on. What's in front of you is there. You got eyewitnesses. I think that's paramount myself, but the thousands of people who have seen them, that's a lot of liars.
Well, and it's
I
spread out over a large span of time, right? I mean,
an eyewitness is an eyewitness. I mean, I can't think of too much that's more probative than to bring someone in and say, tell me about this. On such and such a day, I looked and I saw this and I saw these characteristics and blah, 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 blah. That's as good as it gets in a court of law.
I think
he stood there and I saw him. Right. He stood there and I saw him and he pulled the trigger and he blew the guy away.
I think the big difference is, in a court setting, that's an established framework that everyone, it's established that's the way laws are going to work. These are the laws. This is how they're going to work. This is the system for making these things applicable. So when you have an eyewitness who's sworn in, they give their testimony, and then a jury or the judge, weighs that information and makes a judgment. When this stuff has never been put into any kind of a framework. It's just kind of put out there by people. And so that means just anybody can weigh in on with whatever opinion they have. And really, it's like Renee Hendon always said, one of my favorite quotes of his, everyone has a right to their opinion, but nobody has a right to be wrong about the facts. Without the facts, opinions are meaningless. So when a lot of these people weigh in with their opinions, they aren't giving their opinions based on much of anything except their own beliefs.
Yeah, an opinion based
Tony,
on
I've got
one thing. An opinion based on an eyewitness account is completely different, however.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
That distinction is huge. And, somebody asked a question?
Well, I was going to ask a question, Tony, and that is, a lot of these people, these eyewitnesses, have reported to the authorities, to law enforcement or federal authorities, like rangers and BLM guys and stuff like that. If this is a rhetorical question, but is there a repercussion for making false reports regardless? In other words, if I go in and I make a false report to law enforcement that something happened, are there consequences for that? And
yeah, sure, that's illegal. Making a false report is illegal.
That was, like I said, a rhetorical question. And so of all the thousands of reports, if like you said, that's a lot of liars, there'd be a lot of liars who are, for lack of a better word, libeling themselves, right?
Well, they're risking, but not all of the people who we're discussing have filed reports, obviously. So those who have placed themselves at risk for filing a false claim, I suppose. Whether that would be a deterrent or not, I doubt it. But even if you took, called half of them liars, you still have a whole lot of people out there left.
Yeah, and there have been a few that have actually had sworn affidavits of their accounts. So I suppose in those cases...
Unfortunately, Will, I hate to say this, but after 50 years, the first couple of years of practice, I was appalled at the number of people who lied on the witness stand. It was just, I thought it was such a sacrosanct body and event that if you're in a court of law, he's going to get up there and swear to tell the truth, and he's going to tell the truth, and that's the gospel. And nothing could be farther from the truth. No, it was really a huge eye-opener for me and kind of a letdown. So, yeah, he could prepare a declaration or an affidavit sworn under oath, but judges just kind of shrug it off, to be honest with you. They look at the demeanor. They look at the demeanor of the witness. You listen to him. Is it possible that he saw it this way? And did he look and sound like he was honest?
Well,
that's more important
and
than the fact that he raised his right hand.
Yeah, I've had people contact me and they'd say, well, maybe you should have, I'm thinking the word, where you do a lie detector test with somebody. And I always have to tell them, going back to my psychology training and the reasoning, lie detector tests are not admissible in any courts is because people can fake those. They can.
They're not admissible. They never have been admissible, but I personally think they're very reliable.
They can be, and it just depends on how good the liar is.
The police do too,
right?
Because when they administer a polygraph, if the person passes it, they'll drop that case.
Mm-hmm.
So they must feel that there's validity there. Yeah, there's people who can skate by, but I'm telling you, they're rare.
Yeah,
you got to be up. I know some politicians who could probably pass.
Oh, I think for professionals, But I remember all the this how the system, your body's works, and some people can actually have more control over their blood pressure and things like that than other people, and can fool those systems, which is why they decided not to be able to make those things allowable in courts. But so anyway,
when they made that decision not to allow it in court, it was early on, and they have perfected the polygraph since then. But regardless, the law seems to continue to drag on. And not allow it into evidence. But they check your eye movement now.
Mm-hmm.
They can test perspiration. They test temperature, obviously heart rate, respiration rate. You got to be a real pro. You got to be in the Senate or the House of Representatives to be able to do that.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I have a question. Has there ever been a case where, say, a law enforcement person, or even a judge for that matter, hears a report, like let's say that somebody submits a sighting, a report of an encounter, and you have somebody in law enforcement that just doesn't believe in the subject at all and actually went through and tried to prosecute them for a false report?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I've known a number of law enforcement officers that have seen these things, and it's a big eye-opener for them. But as far as trying to prosecute somebody for filing a false report, I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Prosecutors have too much to do.
Yeah, I think by the time it gets there. Yeah, and Tony, I'm sure you know this. They have a lot to do. So something like this, with the reputation the subject has, just going to think, oh yeah, it's baloney. I'm not even going to waste my time with that.
Yeah, that's where this age-old question of if one was shot and killed, are they going to be prosecuted? And that boils down to the prosecuting attorney.
Yeah,
that's you got the prosecuting attorney for the county or the state is going to look at that and say, boy, do I prosecute this? It's not the federal government. It's this guy who sits down and has dinner every night with his wife and family. And then it becomes political. Oh, you sure you want to waste our time and money on this thing?
Could be a real can of worms.
Well, yeah, so that's who it boils down to. This one poor guy who, lights his camels at night and he doesn't know what to do.
Wouldn't it be interesting? Of course, this is this probably never happened, or at least for several years. But could you imagine if something like that were to happen and someone were prosecuted, and then it goes, keep with the appellate process, it keeps getting appealed, and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And I wonder how they would rule. Just imagine that.
Well, here's the thing. If somebody were to kill one and bring a body in, and they were prosecuted for that, first of all, what would they be prosecuted for? And because, number one, there aren't any laws governing that, and then the whole Endangered Species Act would kick in. and that could take many years before they make any sort of determinations there. So that action would be before all of that took place. So the person doing the shooting really wouldn't know what it was they were shooting. And is it a life and death situation? There's a whole, and I'm sure, Tony, there's a whole host of factors that would play into something like that.
Well, to me, and of course it's never been done, but the factor that would, I think, be paramount would be somebody who tries to determine what it is. Is it more DNA that shows it is more likely human, or a greater percentage of human, or is it a greater percentage of animal? And then somebody has to determine, well, if we feel it's 51% human, then it's murder. Questions like that, that to me would be where that would go, as bizarre as it would sound. And quite frankly, if you looked at it, let's say you shot the animal and they determined it was an animal, then you have to any rules and regulations against shooting an animal like this.
And the fact that, we're supposedly the only hominid species left living of all of them that did exist, and I'm pretty certain it's going to prove out to be another hominid species, not human. So how do you, with no laws governing that, to me, that's up in the air.
Yeah, a long way.
We've never had a reason to make any kind of laws governing other hominids.
Yeah, it's first blush. There's no doubt about it.
And I got a question regarding that, and that is, if it got to the point where one shot and one side says, well, gosh, we did the test, that comes up as 51% human, would that bring about, I'm just wondering if the other side would bring in their expert witnesses and say, we've studied it and you're actually wrong and it's not 51%. Could you see a scenario like that playing out that would drag it on for a long time?
Here's something you could throw in there too, though. Since chimps come up, and not it wouldn't be come up saying human, say 51% human. What it would come up is shared DNA characteristics. Like with chimps, they share 98% characteristics DNA as humans do. But if you kill a chimp, it's not homicide. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. In answer to the...
Well, that brings up a question. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
In answer to the previous question, of course you would have an expert on the other side. That's what trial is all about. It's a war of the experts. So you'd have 2 and 3 and 4 experts on one side and 2 and 3 and 4 on the other. And, that's the way the game is played. You buy your experts.
Well, and Will, I've got a question for you. Okay. Yeah. So the chimps share a significant portion of their DNA with our DNA.
Right.
But and obviously they're not human. Well, with the exception of some of the people I've worked with and coworkers I've had in the past, we won't talk about that. But
because it isn't just DNA, it's morphological characteristics that define a species. So we know the Sasquatch does not share many morphological similarities to make them human. They're very different. So you have to consider those things. There might be a lot of shared characteristics in DNA with us, but when you look at the morphological similarities or dissimilarities, there's some big differences, just like with chimps and gorillas. You're not going to lump them in the same species as us.
So what makes a hominid versus an animal?
Well, it's the morphological similarities. And when you look at chimps and gorillas, there's a lot of similarities that lump them in the same kind of family grouping. And we'd have to get John, our forensic anthropologist, to give us a much more defined explanation. But and we should probably do that here. We could bring him on with Tony too. There could be some interesting conversations there. Some splitting of hairs, so to speak. But then you get down to species definition. And that's where the dissimilarities come in. So the Sasquatch, if you look at feet and hands and some of the other characteristics, are more similar to us than they are, say, chimps and gorillas. You know what I'm saying? So that would make them more closely a hominid than the great apes. Even though I know today they're trying to put them all in the same groupings, and for whatever reason, I don't know, but there are some clear differences.
You guys want to have a little fun? I'm kicking this around in my mind as to how that would work in the courtroom. I have heard, and this is for fun, but I've heard a number of accounts where hunters have had these things in their sights. They couldn't pull the trigger because it looked too human. It looked like a human. They couldn't pull the trigger.
And some of the variations do. That goes back to the four main groupings we talked about, or Brian brought up. There is a type that's been described many times as, quote unquote, like the caveman type, where it is a little bit more in appearance what we'd think of as humans, where there's some that are completely not. If you look at the Patterson film, that obviously does not look like a human in any way.
Now let's take that. Let's say that one that resembles a human the most is shot, and they photograph that face, and they show that face to the jury, and they say, would you shoot this thing? Doesn't this look like a human being to you? Do you really believe in your heart that you could shoot and this human and walk away unscathed? I could see that argument in a heartbeat.
I could see the opposite argument too. Is what's the rest of the morphology tell us? You know what I mean? If you're looking at just the face, yeah.
I'm just playing at this courtroom play, but I can see that happening.
Oh, sure, absolutely, absolutely.
But then
it's a fun exercise, and it goes back to what Brian was talking about, where you could exhaust the appellate process and take it all the way up, to the Supreme Court.
Look at these feet. These feet look like feet of a person to you. Does a person have this kind of strength? I can see this going back and forth and back and forth. That'd be a hell of a trial.
But you could also make the pretty compelling case that it was maybe self-defense if it was.
That's irrelevant. But that's irrelevant right now. We're just discussing whether or not you can argue to the jury if it's a human or if it's an animal, and then you take the next step. If it's a human, then is it justified?
Right.
And then you get into the self-defense and whether it could be shot and whether you could. Oh, gee.
Well, then that goes back to if you prove that they're man-eaters and the person felt for their safety. Yeah, that's a pretty clear argument there.
Yeah, that's self-defense, obviously. Yeah, that's, be a heck of a trial, man.
It would be. Fellas, did we have any other listener questions?
I think I'm good for now.
Brian, did you have anything, or?
I guess just one final question, and I guess it's a personal question, but and I was just looking up today, doing research. Have you ever heard or been to it's in Santa Cruz, but it's called the Bigfoot Discovery Museum?
No, I haven't been there, but I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, I was just curious. It's run by a guy named Mike Rugg.
Oh, yeah. I guess he's a really nice guy and everything. I don't know much about it, though.
Oh, okay.
I think there are a few of those kind of places around the country. Not a lot, but a few here and there. Like the guy, we're going to talk to in Florida next week.
Yeah.
I don't know, Brian, if you want to bring up talk a little bit about that before we do the recording, what he's got there and what he knows, what he presents.
Yeah, well, he runs I guess it would almost be like a tour museum, but he takes people out on tours, I think. But he's interested in the Florida swamp ape, and he's located in South Florida. And hopefully we should be able to bring him on next week for an interview. So
and I I was going to mention too, for listeners, we're going to interview Lyle Blackburn next week also. Get some more information. We've done a few interviews regarding, Arkansas and the Falk Monster and all that area. So Lyle's done some work in that area and knows a little bit about that. So that'll be an interesting interview. Well, Tony, did you have any questions? Or
I do. Do you think that there are still types and groups, let's say types of Sasquatch, who have yet to really be discovered?
It's possible, sure. Mr. Black, who I've talked about, told me there may even be a fifth and there are a number of variations, of course. Specific types could be. We don't know much about South America or Mexico. They are seen there. Different varieties. There was Deloy's ape, and I can't remember what year that was. It was in the 1920s, I believe. That was different than what we're talking about here. Smaller variations. One was shot and killed. There were two of them that actually started attacking the group of explorers that went there, and with rocks and things, which we've heard plenty of times here, things being thrown at them, and they shot the male. There was a male and a female. Could very well be a different variation of these things. So is it possible? Sure.
Do you know if other governments treat this topic like our government does? We know that they put the lid on it, they hush it up. Do other governments do that as well?
I'll just say yes. I'm not going to delve too much into that aspect, but yeah.
I wonder why.
Well, I kind of know, but again, I'm not going to talk too much at this point about it. Well, we're running a little bit short of time, fellas. Any final thoughts or questions or things you want to talk about?
No.
Oops, dropped my microphone here. The cord's being uncooperative.
I'm good. I think it was another good session.
Yeah, and we certainly appreciate
Yeah, I think it was a real good session.
Appreciating it.
And I want to thank Tony.
I was just going to do that. Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
He always brings some interesting perspectives to the questions, that's for sure. And what I'd like to do is we'll see if we can arrange. We're going to have to get you set up with Skype so we can bring John, our forensic anthropologist, on, so we can get, both legal and the science angle kind of working together when we talk about some of these discussions, especially, that theoretical court setting.
That would be interesting.
Absolutely.
He's been there. He's sharp. He's a sharp guy.
He is a sharp guy. Well, and we'd like to, for people listening, since, Tony is, retired, longtime litigator, attorney, and judge, we'd like to have you actually conduct some of the interviews with some of our witnesses who, if you're interested in having an attorney and a judge conduct an interview with you, a deposition, we'd certainly like to have you come on and do that.
I'd be happy to walk them through it.
Well, we'd appreciate it. So anyway,
and I just want to say.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, and don't be intimidated. I think that would be a privilege because it would probably be a real interesting interview.
Yeah, because we can ask a lot of questions, but somebody who's a professional at conducting interviews, it would be really interesting to see how that goes, and it would be a privilege, to have Tony interview you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, fellas. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up for this segment. Stay tuned for Jim's story. And again, if you have questions, comments, if you're a witness and would like to come on, contact us at creekdevil.com. And Tom, I don't know if you want to give you and Brian's emails too.
Yeah. So you can, just questions at creekdevil.com is send your questions. And if you have an encounter, we'd love to hear from you. That's where we hear a lot of this. People that contact us, and it's just encounters at creekdevil.com. And maybe you just want to share your encounter, but you don't necessarily want to be a witness, or maybe you're kind of on the fence about that, you can still send your encounter to encounters@creekdevil.com and just let us know. And you're in the driver's seat as to whether we interview you or not. So
I'd also like to add, if you don't want to record but want to share an encounter, I'm still collecting stories for my third installment of Witness of the Unknown books. Volume 3, I'm collecting stories for that. So if you want to just write out your account and send it to me at williamjevning@yahoo.com, I would really appreciate that. Okay, fellas, that's a wrap for this segment. Everyone, stay tuned for the third segment of the show after the break.
Welcome. This story is being brought to you by William Jevning and is being narrated by me, Jim Sower. This story comes to us from Argosy Magazine, December 1977. It's titled Bigfoot, Man, Beast, or Myth, and is written by Jeff Williams. The number of reports from respected people, the finding of footprints in areas too remote for pranksters to expect success, lends credibility to the belief that something is out there. But what? There was a downdraft of cool mountain air following Virgil Larsen as he moved down the forested slopes of Mount Shasta. Even though weighted by a chainsaw and tools, Larsen moved through the Northern California woods with practiced ease. He was a timber faller and had worked in the woods for 30 of his 47 years. His partner, Pat Conway, was off to the left, and Larsen could no longer see or hear him. At the base of a towering Douglas fir, Larsen sat down for a quick smoke. It was 8:30, Friday, September 3rd. As he smoked and enjoyed the cathedral solitude of the forest, he heard the sound of someone moving toward him from above, the sound of feet breaking the carpet of twigs and underbrush. Idly, Larsen looked up and saw a figure moving easily toward him through the light-patterned woods. Must be the Forest Service guy coming down to check what we're cutting, he mused to himself. He glanced back at the figure, which had closed to 30 feet, but was moving away at a tangent. Thinking the ranger had missed him, Larsen yelled. At that, the figure turned his head toward Larsen as if seeing him for the first time, but kept moving away in long, swinging strides. Larsen yelled again at the tall figure as it dropped down the ridge a little and disappeared behind a screen of trees. Larsen began to get to his feet to see where it had gone. Abruptly, a few dozen feet below him, the tall creature rose from behind a bush and stared balefully at him for a long second before disappearing. At that moment, I realized I didn't know what the hell I was looking at, and that's when I took off. Larsen, a normally quiet and reserved man, ran in terror down the other slope to his partner. Together, he and Conway returned to where Larsen had been sitting. That was when they first became aware of the stomach-churning odor in the forest. It smelled rotten and rancid like an old bear hide, Larsen recalled. To estimate the creature's size, Conway went behind the bush where it had been. Only by pushing his hat up on a stick could he be located behind the bush that the creature had easily looked over. It had to be about 7 feet tall, but I don't know what it was, Larsen said. I can only remember it looking over the bush, and I knew it wasn't a bear. Bears don't walk through the woods on 2 feet. I can only remember from the hairline up, just dark hair pushed straight back. I can't remember the face at all. Larsen studied the burning cigarette between his fingers and quietly admitted he lies awake now wondering what he saw. Was it Sasquatch? The giant ape-man that thousands believe stalks the vast mountainous forest regions between Northern California and British Columbia? Larsen just shakes his head. The shock of seeing something so strange has blanked his mind on the subject. Larsen's foreman, when questioned about the reliability of his follower, was blunt. "Let me put it this way," said Ralph Gant. "If Larson told me he had seen Jesus Christ, I would believe him." Sergeant Walt Bullington, the deputy sheriff who investigated the sighting, said, "I think he's telling the truth, and as he knows it, he's not falsifying." Larson is just one of numerous reliable men who have spent years in the woods and have nothing to gain but the scorn of fellow workers who admit to seeing that giant hairy creature commonly known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Unquestionably, there are mistaken sightings and outright hoaxes, but the number of reports by respected men finding of footprints in areas too remote for pranksters to expect success lends credibility to the belief that something is out there. And that something is generally reported to be about 7 feet tall, covered with dark hair and virtually no neck. It has massive shoulders, obviously is heavy, and leaves man-like footprints 14 to 18 inches long and 8 inches wide. The reports are not just a new fad. In April of 1840, the Reverend Elkanah Walker, missionary to the Spokane Indians, wrote a long letter to his superior filled with misgivings on the future of the Indians. They seem as fated to fade away before the whites as the game of their country. In closing, he added this surprising note: "I suppose you will bear with me if I trouble you with a little of their superstition. They believe in the existence of a race of giants which inhabit a certain mountain off to the west of us. They say their track is about 1.5 feet long. They will carry 2 or 3 beams on their back at once. They frequently come in the night and steal their salmon from the nets and eat them raw. If the people are awake, they always know when they are coming very near, by their strong smell, which is most intolerable. It is not uncommon for them to come in the night and give 3 whistles, and then the stones will begin to hit their homes." Since that early report, stories of Sasquatch have become legend. One of the most controversial pieces of evidence surrounding the creature centers on a short length of 16mm film shot in 1967 by a rancher named Roger Patterson. Patterson, now dead, said he and his partner, Bob Gimlin, were looking for Bigfoot along the rugged Bluff Creek in northern California when their horses suddenly spooked. Patterson was thrown, but struggled to his feet with camera in hand to make a jerky film of what appears to be a female Sasquatch moving away rapidly at an oblique angle. The creature turns and looks toward the camera, and her ponderous, hairy breasts are visible. Precisely because she had no hair on her breast, the film was rejected by many scientists who note that even on gorillas there is virtually no hair. Also, it walked in an upright manner that was unacceptable to most scientists. It was a powerful, rolling gait of considerable speed, yet it did not run. However, even the specialists at Disney Studios could not prove the film a fake. A group of Soviet scientists who are searching for their own Bigfoot, which they call, more accurately, a relic hominoid, viewed the film and agreed that because of the size of the muscles rippling visibly beneath the hairy coat, it was not likely faked, wrote Dr. Dmitry D. Donskoy, chief of the chair of biomechanics at the USSR Central Institute of Physical Culture in Moscow. With all the diversity of the locomotion illustrated by the creature in the footage, its gait, as seen, is absolutely non-typical of man. Apart from the film, footprints with the distinctive hourglass outline are the only tangible evidence that such a creature, a giant creature, may in fact exist. And those footprints trouble the highly scientific mind of Dr. John Napier, a visiting professor of primate biology at the University of London. In his book, Bigfoot, Napier studied hundreds of samples of the broad prints and said, "There is a curious and persuasive consistency about the hourglass footprints. They present an aberrant but nevertheless uniform pattern. This is hard to reconcile with fakery. Napier, a specialist in the anatomy of ape and human feet, also studied casts from a set of prints in Bosburg, Washington, that stretched half a mile. Napier was surprised to find that the right foot was a club foot, possibly the result of a crushing injury in childhood. It is very difficult to conceive of a hoaxer so subtle, so knowledgeable, and so sick, who would deliberately fake a footprint of this nature. I suppose it is possible, but it is so unlikely that I am prepared to discount it. Napier concludes by saying, I am convinced that the Sasquatch exists, but whether it is all that it is cracked up to be is another matter altogether. There must be something in Northwest America that needs explaining, and that something leaves man-like footprints. The evidence I have adduced in favor of the reality of Sasquatch is not hard evidence. Few physicists, biologists, or chemists would accept it, but nevertheless, it is evidence and cannot be ignored. This conclusion, even from such an eminent scientist, sticks in the throat of Dr. William Montagna, director of the prestigious Oregon Regional Primate Research Center. In a scathing denunciation of the Sasquatch legend and its investigators, Montagna wrote in the September Primate News, fascinated by the unknown and goaded by his imagination, man is forever fabricating devils and saints. Nothing is to be gained by arguing with believers. Incapable of sifting reality from fantasy, they swear to have seen the footprints of Bigfoot or of the abominable snowman, Yeti, and to have heard their chilling roars. Even the tricksters who would perpetrate these outlandish hoaxes sometimes come to believe in the reality of their creatures. Montagna appears unwilling to at least keep an open mind on Sasquatch, but other eminent scientists are pursuing their investigations. Edward W. Cronin, Jr., a zoologist who spent 2 years in the Himalayas looking for the Yeti, concluded it had to exist after awakening one morning to find a clear set of prints in light and unmarred snow outside his tent. The Yeti, which may be a smaller, distant relation to the Sasquatch, passed by Cronin's tent and proceeded down a steep and dangerous slope that made it evident to the zoologist that the creature was far stronger than he was. He concluded in an article for the November 1975 issue of The Atlantic that based on this experience, I believe there is a creature alive today in the Himalayas which is creating a valid zoological mystery. As evidence mounts that both a Yeti and a Sasquatch exist, the question of what exactly it is becomes more pertinent. The leading contender in the minds of a few scientists is Gigantopithecus, a massive creature that existed as late as 500,000 years ago in the Himalayas in China. His few fossil remains indicate he was more than 7 feet tall. Dr. Paul Simons, the senior physical anthropologist at the University of Oregon, told me in an interview that it is conceivable that Gigantopithecus crossed the land bridge at the Bering Strait just as man did some 50,000 years ago. My basic feeling is there is no such thing, but I'm not willing to rule it out, Simons said. He then added a fascinating bit of evidence that Gigantopithecus might have migrated while other primates, like the gorilla, remained in the tropics. He noted that chimpanzees and gorillas wear their teeth down similarly, and that Gigantopithecus and early man wore their teeth down in the same fashion. So it looks as though there is a similar jaw action, Simons said. Does that mean they went looking for similar food? At least it means their dietary adaptation was not similar to the chimp and the gorilla who stayed in the tropics, but it's hard to go beyond that. He said if there is something roaming the great northwest forests, why hasn't someone found conclusive proof? Skeletal remains, hair, or fossils? Such questions make thousands of skeptics react like Dan Mott, a rancher who has spent most of his 42 years hunting and fishing in the mountains of California. Bigfoot is just a bunch of crap. With all those hunters out there every year, someone would have found one or shot one by now if it was really there. One man who ardently believes both that Sasquatch is in fact out there, but should never be shot, is Peter Byrne, a Britisher. Actually, he's Irish, in his early 50s. Byrne has all the rugged looks of a professional game hunter, which is precisely what he was for 20 years in Nepal. Then, beginning in 1962, he made 2 expeditions in search of the Yeti. Although both failed, Byrne became convinced the Yeti existed. Then, at the urging of Texas oil millionaire Tom Slick, Byrne came to the Northwest to use his hunting skills in finding Sasquatch. For 6 years, Byrne has continued his lonely search, what he terms the ultimate hunt, but now, instead of a rifle, he carries a camera. From the modest trailer he calls home in the Dalles, Oregon, Byrne points at the dark coniferous forest that begins not far away. Once you go 50 feet into those forests, you simply disappear. It is as dense as any jungle, and we're dealing with a nomadic group, or individuals who stay in an area only one day before moving on. This adds to the difficulty of finding them. Byrne notes that the soil of the Northwest is too acidic for fossils, and that if a Sasquatch did die in the forest, other animals would eat it and scatter the bones within days. With only a handful of the creatures around and thousands of square miles of extremely rugged mountains, it is conceivable for Sasquatch to remain largely invisible. One only has to recall Ishi, the last of a Stone-Aged Indian tribe who remained hidden with his family in a canyon only 8 miles from Oroville, California in the early 1900s until he voluntarily appeared. The Tassidae tribe, another Stone Age people, were found in the Philippine jungles only in 1971. The mountain gorilla was not proven until 1902. Byrne, who has never seen or heard a Sasquatch, has seen 16 separate sets of prints that he, a veteran tracker, believes to be the real thing. If he feels sure that the Sasquatch are out there, why continue to hunt them down? It doesn't seem important except for one reason. We're not going to get protective legislation for something that is not proven. When it is known to exist, there will be expeditions, and some scientific expeditions can be awfully ruthless. We hope there will be full protection to the point where even a scientific expedition from the Smithsonian Institution will not be allowed to collect a specimen. Another veteran Sasquatch hunter is George Haas, a scholarly 70-year-old man who lives in an Oakland, California apartment filled with books and files on Sasquatch. Haas has the most extensive files on Sasquatch in the country, 3,000 news clippings alone. Like Byrne, he is strongly opposed to any talk of killing a Bigfoot just to prove it exists. The last thing we need to do is shoot or even capture a specimen. It is more than a rare animal. It may be a primitive man. To kill him would be murder. Indeed, why find him at all? To protect him, some argue. But if Sasquatch is proven to exist, there will be massive hunts by amateurs and professionals alike. It seems all too conceivable that the pressure of organized drives for Sasquatch, complete with helicopters and listening devices as used in Vietnam, would force the creature totally out of the area or into extinction. Find Sasquatch? To what end? So he could spend his life behind bars in a zoo? Or be constantly probed and prodded by scientists, made cranky because they will have to rewrite their concepts of evolution? If Sasquatch exists, and the weight of evidence that he does is too much to ignore, then it seems best to let him and our dreams continue happily apart. We may find that we enjoy the legend of Sasquatch much more than the smelly beast itself. Copyright Argosy Magazine, December, January 1977. This is the end of the story. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.